He walked into a jewelry store to buy a gift for his mom. Minutes later, cops had him cornered. Why? It was a Tuesday afternoon in Scottsdale, Arizona, the kind of day when the sun hits just right and the air feels like it's holding its breath between spring and summer. The plaza was quiet, clean, and tucked between palm trees and polished sidewalks. Stores lined the walkway, designer boutiques, an art gallery, a tiny cafe with overpriced espresso. And then there was Grantham and Lane, the jewelry store Jalen Carter had Googled the night before. He stood outside for a second, checking the time on his phone. 2:36 p.m. He had enough saved, 3 months of stocking shelves at the campus bookstore, plus birthday money he hadn't touched. All for one gift. His mom's birthday was coming up and he wanted something real, not a candle, not a card, something that would last, something she wouldn't expect. Jalen adjusted the hood on his black Nike sweatshirt and pushed the door open. Inside, it smelled like glass cleaner and lavender. The lighting was soft, but bright enough to make the diamonds scream. Everything sparkled, rings, necklaces, earrings, laid out like artwork behind spotless glass. The air conditioning whispered from vents in the ceiling. A man in a navy suit stood behind the counter, wiping a case with a microfiber cloth. He glanced up and gave a practiced smile. "Afternoon. Let me know if you need help," the man said. Jalen gave a polite nod. "Just looking, thanks." He moved slow, not because he was scared, but because he didn't want to look like he didn't belong. That kind of place made you aware of every step, every breath. He paused in front of a necklace display, silver chains, some with little charms, one with a heart-shaped emerald that caught his eye. He imagined his mom opening it. Simone Bellamy, 45, tough, brilliant, and rarely surprised by anything. She didn't wear much jewelry, just a simple gold watch and a pair of hoops most days, but he figured maybe it was time she had something she didn't buy for herself. He leaned a little closer, studying the prices. Most were out of range, like 3 paychecks out of range. But there was one chain, thin and delicate, tucked at the end of the row with a small gold key charm. It was still expensive, but not impossible. And something about it felt right. "Thinking about a gift?" the man behind the counter asked, stepping over. Jalen nodded. "Yeah, for my mom." "Well, you've got good taste. That one's 14 karat. You want to take a closer look?" Jalen smiled. "Yeah, please." The man unlocked the case and gently pulled the necklace out, laying it on a velvet pad. Jalen leaned in. It was perfect. Simple, beautiful, not loud. The kind of thing his mom could wear with anything. But just as he was about to ask about payment options, the door behind him opened. The bell chimed softly. A woman walked in. Older, maybe 60s. Pale skin, sharp bob haircut, pressed slacks, and a fitted blouse. She carried a leather handbag in one hand and a certain kind of tension in the other. The kind that enters a room a few seconds before the person does. Her name was Cheryl Danvers, and Jalen didn't notice her at first, but she noticed him. She looked him over once, then again. Her eyes didn't stay on the jewelry or the displays. They locked on Jalen like she was trying to figure out a puzzle that didn't make sense to her. He kept admiring the necklace, unaware. He didn't hear her short sigh. He didn't notice her taking out her phone. He didn't see her glance at the associate with raised brows. But what he did notice, what made him pause, was how quiet the room suddenly felt. Like someone turned the volume down, just a little. But what Jalen didn't know yet was that a perfectly normal birthday errand was about to turn into something much, much bigger. Cheryl Danvers stood near the entrance, pretending to glance at a tray of engagement rings. Her movements were controlled, but her eyes never strayed too far from the boy at the counter. She leaned slightly toward the glass, then gave a soft, deliberate laugh, as if she had just remembered something funny. But it didn't reach her eyes. Her right hand was still gripping her phone, unlocked, ready, watching. Jalen turned to the sales associate. "How much did you say it was again?" $429, the man replied, "before tax." Jalen nodded slowly. "All right. And you all take Apple Pay?" "We do." That was it. Nothing suspicious. No sudden moves. No raised voices. Just a teenager trying to make a purchase for his mom. But Cheryl had already made a decision. She shifted her weight, cleared her throat loud enough for the associate to hear. He looked up briefly, then returned his attention to Jalen. That was strike one in Cheryl's mind. She walked to the next display case, closer now, close enough to hear Jalen's voice. You think I could maybe have it held for a couple days? He asked, just to be sure I got the total covered. The associate hesitated. Normally we don't hold without a deposit, but I could check with the manager. Jalen smiled, hopeful. Appreciate that. Cheryl took a step back, then another. She walked toward the door, her lips pressed tight. Once outside, she exhaled, like she had just escaped something dangerous. She tapped the screen on her phone and held it to her ear. Hi, yes. I need to report something. There's a young man in a hoodie inside Grantham and Lane. He's acting nervous, kept looking around. I think he might be planning to steal something. She paused, watched him through the window. No, he hasn't taken anything yet, but he's clearly casing the place. Back inside, Jalen was texting his friend, asking if he still had that old Visa gift card from Christmas, wondering if he could trade cash for it today. He had enough with the card. The associate returned from the back. All right, we can hold it for 24 hours if you leave 50 down. That work? Jalen nodded quickly. Yeah, that's perfect. As he pulled out his wallet, the front door opened again. This time, it wasn't Cheryl. It was a mother with her toddler in a stroller. Jalen smiled politely as she maneuvered her way past him. The moment felt normal again. But outside, Cheryl stayed by the fountain, phone still in hand, giving exact details. She described Jalen's clothes, his build, his skin tone. She mentioned the price of the jewelry and the fact that he'd been trying to make a deal. Inside, Jalen handed over the deposit, got his receipt, and started to turn toward the door. Then, the store's atmosphere shifted. The associate glanced up, brows slightly raised. His eyes weren't on Jalen anymore. They were on the parking lot behind him. And now, Jalen noticed two police cruisers rolling slowly to a stop outside. His heart jumped just a little. He looked down at the receipt in his hand, then back at the clerk. The door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. They scanned the room, then walked directly toward Jalen. But Jalen didn't run. He didn't even move, because for the first few seconds, he couldn't believe what was happening. Excuse me, son, we need to speak with you, said the taller officer, voice steady but firm. His name tag read M. Delgado. Jalen blinked. Me? The second officer, a woman in her 30s with dark brown hair tied back, added, Can you just step over here for a minute? Jalen glanced down at the bag in his hand, receipt sticking out of the top like a white flag. His mouth was dry. I didn't do anything. I was just... We're not accusing you of anything, Officer Delgado interrupted. Just need to ask a few questions. The mother with the stroller paused mid-browse, suddenly pretending to be absorbed in a sapphire ring. The associate froze behind the counter, hands folded, looking like he wished he could vanish. Jalen took a slow step toward the side wall, both officers flanking him now. What's your name? The woman officer asked. Jalen Richardson. All right, Jalen, what brings you to this store today? He held up the bag slightly. I just put a deposit on a necklace for my mom's birthday. Officer Delgado raised an eyebrow. You came alone? Yes. You live around here? Tempe. I took the bus. There was a pause, a long one. Delgado clicked his pen. You been in here long? Jalen stared. Why does that matter? Just trying to confirm a report, the woman said. Someone called in about suspicious behavior, said you were looking around a lot. I was looking at jewelry, Jalen replied, a little sharper than before. That's what people do in a jewelry store, right? Delgado didn't respond. The female officer, Officer Brenner, took out her notebook. You said your name was Jalen Richardson? Jalen hesitated. Yes, Brenner scribbled. Mind showing some ID? I'm 17. So student ID? Jalen dug into his wallet slowly and pulled it out. Here. She took it, checked it, wrote something else down. Outside, Cheryl lingered by the storefront, watching. She clutched her purse like she had just saved the day. Back inside, Jalen glanced at the associate. You told them I did something? The man shook his head quickly. No, I didn't. I told them you were a customer. Jalen turned back to the officers. So, what now? Delgado finally softened his tone. Look, we just have to follow up when a call like this comes in. You match the description. Jalen looked down at himself. You mean I'm black? In a hoodie? Neither officer answered. Brenner handed back his student ID. You said you left a deposit? Yeah, want to see the receipt? Delgado nodded. Jalen handed it over. The officer scanned it, then passed it to Brenner. You mind if we speak with the store manager? She asked the associate. I'm the assistant manager, he replied. And honestly, he didn't do anything wrong. Paid in full for the hold. Polite, quiet. I don't know why someone would call you. Jalen let out a long breath through his nose. He could feel his face getting hot, not from guilt, but from shame he didn't deserve. Delgado nodded again. All right, I think we're done here. Jalen didn't move. Sorry about the inconvenience, Brenner said, almost like muscle memory. Jalen turned to leave, but then stopped. His voice was lower now. You know my mom works in law enforcement? She ever told me this might happen one day, that somebody'd call the cops on me for standing in the wrong place too long. I used to think she was exaggerating. Delgado's mouth twitched. Brenner looked down. Then the bell above the door rang again. Jalen didn't even turn around. He just muttered, Great, what now? A tall black woman walked through the entrance like she owned the room. Dark blazer, slacks, government badge clipped to her hip. No hesitation in her walk. Jalen, she said, voice calm but cool. You all right? He turned around. Yeah, I'm fine. Delgado and Brenner both straightened up as if something had just shifted. Can we help you, ma'am? Delgado asked. She held up her badge without a word, the kind that doesn't come from the local department. The kind with a seal, not a logo. Special Agent Simone Bellamy, FBI. And right under it, Field Office Chief, Phoenix Division. But what made the room truly stop wasn't the badge. It was when she said the next 5 words. I'm his mother. What happened? For a second, no one spoke. The store felt like it had dropped into some kind of freeze frame. Simone's presence was sharp but still, like pressure right before a storm hits. Her eyes scanned the space in one clean sweep. The officers, the sales associate, the mother still pretending to shop, and then finally, Cheryl, who had stepped just inside the door and now stood frozen near the entrance. Simone stepped closer to Jalen. She didn't touch him yet, just looked him over, checked for anything out of place, a habit that came with the badge. When she was satisfied he wasn't hurt, she turned to the officers. What's going on here? Her voice was low, measured. Delgado cleared his throat. We received a call about suspicious activity involving your son, though we weren't aware of his identity when we arrived. I'm aware, Simone said. And what exactly was the suspicious behavior, buying jewelry? Officer Brenner stepped in, trying to ease the tension. Ma'am, we just had to respond to the report. We didn't accuse him of anything. We asked a few questions. That's all. Did he match a suspect description for a known crime? No, ma'am. Did he threaten anyone? No. Did the staff raise a complaint? The associate behind the counter raised a tentative hand. No, not at all. He was great. Really. Simone looked back at Delgado. So why was he pulled aside? Why did he have to show ID? Delgado's expression tightened, but his voice stayed flat. Standard procedure. We just wanted to confirm. You wanted to confirm that a black teenager wasn't robbing a store because a white woman got nervous, Simone said, cutting him off. Let's not pretend this was anything else. Cheryl shifted by the door. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Jalen stood still, his fists in his hoodie pocket, watching, waiting. Simone took a deep breath, steadying herself. She looked down at her son and finally placed a hand on his shoulder. This is exactly why I taught you how to speak clearly and calmly around officers. This is why I told you to never reach fast, never raise your voice, even when you've done nothing wrong. Delgado nodded slowly. We understand this was a misunderstanding. No, Simone said. You don't understand. Because to you, this is another Tuesday. You'll write up the call and forget about it before dinner. But for my son, this isn't just an inconvenience. It's humiliation. It's confirmation that even when he does everything right, someone will still see him as a problem. Officer Brenner looked down again, clearly uncomfortable. Ma'am, we hear you, and we're sorry. Simone turned to Cheryl. Are you the one who made the call? Cheryl's lips parted. She gave a small, uneasy nod. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I was just being cautious. I thought he was acting strange. Simone walked toward her, not fast, not aggressive, but direct. What exactly looked strange to you? The fact that he was quiet? Polite? Or was it that he was young and black in a store where you didn't think he belonged? Cheryl's mouth twitched. That's not what I... Simone held up a hand. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here for accountability. Cheryl shrunk back half an inch. I'm sorry. Simone didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her. Not with anger, but with something deeper, something that forced Cheryl to look away. Then she turned back to Jalen. Let's go. He nodded and picked up his bag, receipt still inside. As they walked past the officers, Simone paused. For future reference, she said, looking at Delgado and Brenner, if someone reports suspicious behavior with no actual threat or crime involved, maybe the first response shouldn't be intimidation. Maybe the first step is to watch, to ask questions without assuming guilt, and maybe to ask yourself why someone looks suspicious to you in the first place. Neither officer replied. As they walked out the door, the mother with the stroller finally exhaled. The sales associate looked like he had just finished holding his breath. Cheryl stood frozen, eyes wide, still holding her phone in both hands. But what Simone had just left in that room wasn't a speech, it was a mirror. And not everyone liked what they saw. Outside, the sunlight felt louder than it had 20 minutes ago. It hit different, harsher. The kind of light that doesn't warm you, it exposes things. Jalen walked a step behind his mom, quiet. Not because he had nothing to say, but because too much had just happened, and he hadn't figured out how to file it all yet. They reached her car, a black government SUV with government plates, and Simone opened the passenger door for him like he was 5 years old again. He didn't argue. He got in. She slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and sat in silence for a moment. Jalen finally spoke. You tracked me? I got a text from the store's fraud alert system, she said, eyes still on the windshield. It pinged my name since you used the family Apple Pay on a high-dollar item. Protocol. Jalen smirked. So, basically, you low-key got me on surveillance. She looked at him. You're not a kid anymore. You're a young black man walking around Arizona. I track you because I love you, and clearly I'm not wrong for it. He nodded. Couldn't argue with that. Simone tapped the steering wheel. You handled yourself well in there. Kept your voice level. Stayed calm. That's not easy. Jalen stared out the window. Didn't feel calm. You didn't show it. That matters. He sighed, pulling at a loose string on his hoodie. It's messed up. I was literally about to buy a necklace for you, and I get treated like I'm about to rob the place. Simone didn't answer right away. Then she said, That woman didn't see you, Jalen. She saw a version of you she's been trained to fear. That's not your fault. But it is your reality. He let that sink in. I thought you being in the FBI might, I don't know, protect me more, he muttered. Her voice was softer now. Me wearing a badge doesn't shield you from perception. It only means I get to see how deep the problem goes. From the inside. Jalen leaned his head back. She didn't even flinch when the cops came in, like she knew she could get away with it. She probably did, Simone replied. Jalen turned toward her now. What happens to people like her? I mean, after this, nothing, right? She goes home, Simone said. Tells herself she was just being careful. Maybe even thinks she was the one treated unfairly. That's crazy. Yep. Jalen was quiet again. Then, so what's the point of being careful? What's the point of doing everything right if it doesn't matter? Simone turned her whole body to face him now. The point is not about them. The point is you, your dignity, your name, how you carry yourself. You did nothing wrong, and you still walked out standing taller than every person in that store. He blinked, staring at the dashboard. Don't let someone else's fear shrink who you are, she said. Jalen cracked a smile. You sound like a TED Talk. Good, she replied. TED Talks change lives. He chuckled. Simone put the car in drive. Let's go home. We'll figure out the rest of that necklace later. Jalen hesitated. Actually, she paused. Can we go back in? She looked at him. Why? He shrugged. I want to buy it now. Like, now. Full price, no hold. She raised her eyebrows. You sure? Yeah. I want them to see me finish what I came to do. She smiled, just a little. All right, let's go make them uncomfortable again. They got out of the car and headed back toward the store, heads high, no shame in sight. But what Jalen didn't realize yet was that this moment, this decision to return, would leave a mark far deeper than just a purchase. The chime above the door rang again, and every head in the jewelry store turned toward it, fast. Cheryl was still inside, standing stiff near the bracelets, fake scrolling on her phone like she was waiting on someone. Her body flinched when she saw Simone walk back in. Then she saw Jalen behind her, and her face dropped. Officer Delgado and Officer Brenner were gone. The room had relaxed just a little, but that second entrance, that tensed everything right back up. Jalen walked straight to the counter. Calm, head high, he held out the receipt. "I'd like to pay the rest now," he said to the associate. The man behind the glass blinked, then cleared his throat. "Of course, yes sir, one moment." Simone stood back, arms folded, scanning the room like a detective off the clock, but still ready for anything. She didn't look at Cheryl until Cheryl started moving toward them. I really am sorry," Cheryl said, voice smaller now. "I never meant for this to—" Simone didn't let her finish. "You meant to call the police," she said, still not facing her. "You meant to describe him as suspicious. That wasn't an accident." Cheryl looked like she wanted to sink into the marble floor. Jalen turned to her, eyes sharp. "What about me scared you so much? My hoodie? My skin?" She opened her mouth, fumbled for words. I didn't say that. When I came in and you were standing there, I was shopping," he interrupted. "I know, there have been stories in the news, and I didn't want to—" Simone stepped in. "You didn't want to be that person, so you became this person instead, the one who makes assumptions and lets them escalate. And now you want us to help you clean it up." "I'm not a bad person," Cheryl whispered. "No," Simone said, turning to face her now. "But you made a bad decision, and decisions reveal who we are in moments that matter." Jalen turned back to the associate and tapped to pay. A quiet ding from the payment reader echoed through the store. It was done. Necklace paid in full. No drama, no confusion. The associate placed the jewelry box in a small velvet pouch and slid it across the glass. "Happy birthday to your mom," he said, sounding more sincere this time. Jalen nodded and turned to leave. Simone followed, but stopped at the door. She looked over her shoulder. "You ever call the police again," she said to Cheryl, "make sure there's an actual threat, not just your discomfort." Cheryl didn't respond. Simone continued. "Because every time you misuse that call, you gamble with someone else's life. And next time, the mother might not get there in time." Jalen held the door open. Simone walked through. They stepped outside again, back into that bold Arizona light. Jalen held up the small bag, shook it gently. "You still don't wear much jewelry," he said. Simone smiled, unlocking the car. "Guess I'll start." As they got in, neither of them looked back. But behind them, inside the store, the silence wasn't just quiet, it was thinking, even Cheryl, especially Cheryl. But sometimes the most powerful change doesn't happen during the argument. It starts right after the door closes. Back at home, the necklace sat on the kitchen counter in its small velvet pouch. Jalen didn't hand it to her with some big speech. He just slid it over and said, "Early gift." Simone opened the box slowly, looked at the delicate chain, the small gold key. She smiled. "Why a key?" Jalen leaned against the counter. "You're the reason I've never felt locked out. From anything. School, life, the world. You always made sure I knew I had the right to be where I stood." Simone nodded once, swallowing the emotion that caught in her throat. "It's beautiful." He didn't say much more after that, and she didn't press. They didn't need to. That night, Simone stood in the doorway of Jalen's room. He was on his bed, headphones on, watching highlights from an NBA game. She waited until he noticed her. "You okay?" she asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. I feel like I should be madder, or sadder, but I'm just tired." "That's honest," she said. Jalen sat up. "You know what scared me the most?" She waited. "I didn't do anything wrong, and they still came at me like I might have." Simone nodded slowly. "That's the trap. You did everything right. But the system doesn't always work based on right or wrong. It works on fear, bias, assumptions. That's why you have to keep showing up the way you did. So they get used to seeing young men like you in places they think you don't belong. Jalen sat quiet for a moment, then, "You think she'll remember?" Simone took a breath. "Yes, but that's not your job. You don't carry her growth. You carry your own." He gave a slow nod. That settled something in him. She stepped forward, kissed his forehead, and left the room. The next morning, Cheryl Danvers sat in her car outside a grocery store, sipping a lukewarm coffee. The world hadn't ended. No news crews, no lawsuits, no real consequences. But her hands were still shaking. She kept hearing the words. Maybe the first step is to ask yourself why someone looks suspicious to you in the first place. That sentence stayed with her longer than any police report ever could. She looked up and saw a group of teenagers walking into the store, laughing, pushing each other, backpacks half-zipped. One of them wore a hoodie. She didn't reach for her phone. She just watched. Jalen's necklace gift stayed on Simone's neck every day after that. Not because it was expensive, but because it came from the kind of strength she wanted him to keep. Not just strength against injustice, but the strength to walk back into a place that tried to make you feel small and leave with your head higher than when you came in. Because the truth is, real change doesn't come from making noise. It comes from making people think. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay exactly where you belong. If you're watching this, and you've ever made assumptions about someone based on how they looked, where they were, or what they wore, ask yourself where that came from. Then challenge it. And if you've ever been the person judged before you even spoke, keep speaking anyway. You deserve to be seen, heard, respected. Change starts with awareness, but it grows when people act differently the next time.